Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Manitoba Agriculture Crop Talk webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please type them into the Q&A tab in your Zoom toolbar, and we'll answer them at the end of each presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. I'd like to welcome everybody to the May 21st edition of Crop Talk. And today we're going to talk a bit about seeding update, crop emerging, some of the things that are going on with some of the crop emerging. And then we're going to hit into our crop scouting panel where we've got a guest on today. Allison Sass is going to be on, and we have some weather questions. And then Dennis Lang is going to be on as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about some emerging peas and maybe some of the things we should be watching for. So we'll get through that and get going. So I guess what a week of weather we had. We went from warm days to heavy rains to no rain to freezing temperatures, and we kind of been all over the board. So it definitely threw a wrench into seeding, and it was seeding progress across the province was fairly slow this past week, mostly due to the rain and the cool conditions. Basically started on probably Wednesday when we started to get rain right after the crop talk when we were talking about dry conditions, and then in the southwest here we started to get rain, and it rained for pretty much off and on for most of the rest of the weekend, maybe even part of the weekend. So it's wet in some part of the province, and it's dry in other parts, and but basically the weather kept producers in the southern part of the province off the fields for probably 5 to 6 days, which I guess when you get it at this time of year, you don't think 5 to 6 days means a lot, but it definitely put a little dent into our timing for getting crop into the grounds, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we get going as well. So start off with some of the winter crops, and I was in some winter wheat fields yesterday. The fall rye is growing probably just as well. I wasn't in a field this past week of fall rye, but the winter wheat is definitely growing. You can see by the picture, it's tillering out really well, starting to fill in the gaps, and really taking advantage of the winter moisture, and these recent rains are just going to make a jump once we start getting some heat, and the cool temperatures have definitely slowed it down, but as you can see by a picture on the right, it's still growing and tillering out quite a bit, and for all the fields I've been in, we're looking at probably average to above average crop right now. It's not much winter kill showing up in most areas. I did see a few low-lying areas that might have had some issues with standing water this spring that may have caused some of those areas to die out a bit. But I think in general the crop is looking really well. A lot of producers have been active with their spraying and trying to get the broadleaf weed control done in their winter cereals. And but one of the fields I was in yesterday, the producer hadn't sprayed yet, and I think one of the things we need to watch for is those winter annuals. The cleaver picture I took right there is definitely getting big to the point where it's going to be hard to control now. And but the wind and the wet conditions were just making it tough for the producer to get the field sprayed. So that I think will be top on the list for the next day when you can start traveling in the field again, is to try to at least set them back, if not get some of the smaller ones that are out there. But a lot of them getting fairly big, and then you can see a picture of the dandelion on the right hand side flowering already. So those ones are going to be hard to set back as well. So again, something to be watching for, not only in your your fall seeded crops, but also in your spring seeded crops. Most of the cereal crops right now, mainly spring wheat, is the one I've been seeing that's up and growing. A lot of them range anywhere from germinating to early emergence to the 2 to 3 leaf stage, and I think when we start looking at that 2 to 3 leaf stage in cereals is the time where we really need to start watching for weeds. We need to get out there as early as we can, and I think some of the fields that producers were spraying are seeding, at least a couple weeks ago now. Those fields are up, and you could definitely see rows. If you can see rows, you're probably looking at a minimum of 2 leaf out there, and once we start getting some heat, the way they're talking over the next few days here, we could see some heat happening. And if that's going to be the case, a lot of these crops are going to start emerging fairly fast and advancing fairly fast because they got the moisture they need now. So they're just gonna keep jumping. So it's like I mentioned, it's important to keep an eye on those crops because like the chart shows, we've shown this chart every pretty much every year on CropTalk, and it talks about the critical weed-free period for your crops to get maximum yields. And when you look at spring wheat, that 1 to 3 leaf stage, so you're where some of those early seeded crops are going to be probably by the mid to end of this week, the end of this week, middle of next week, are going to be in that stage where you're going to need to start really looking at close to getting some of them sprayed. Hopefully the wind conditions will be in our favor, but it seems like every day by dinner time the wind's up already and going. So canola, not a lot of canola in the ground, but when you look at the critical time period, there is the 2 to 4 leaf stage when you want to make sure you get the majority of your weeds out. Soybeans, emergence to the third trifoliate, and another one is corn. Corn's not a real good a competitor when it comes to early emergence and weeds. So the earlier you can get out to control weeds in corn, the best. There's been a fair bit of corn planted. I think it's just some of it is sprouted already. I haven't seen any fields that have been up, but there could be some in the southern parts of the province. But I think there's another one to watch for as we get going here because you'll want to make sure that you're on top of that one just so you can get best early growth from that crop. When we look at canola, planting kind of took a halt probably ever since Tuesday of last week. Producers were waiting for maybe some better weather, some heat to make sure that they could get the crop in and out of the ground as quick as they can. Um, One thing there is once it's dry enough to travel in the fields, I think producers are going to be going full force and getting the canola in the ground right now. I think we're to that stage of the game where we're wanting our producers are wanting to get it in as quick as they can now. I think we jumped a cog there, and I think a lot of crop producers are going to want to get in as quick as they can as we approach the fourth week of May here. I think we're getting to a point where we need to start getting it in and taking advantage of the growing season. Peas and soybeans. Well, peas, I would say in most of the province are in the ground and in most areas starting to emerge. We'll see more of the information as the crop report comes out this afternoon, but I would say the majority are in. Soybeans, probably more soybeans in than we normally would have had before the rainfall there. Because producers were waiting for better conditions for canola. They were jumping into soybeans and planting their soybeans. And actually, when you look back, it was probably a really good thing to do because it's going to take advantage of the moisture and the heat when it does come in, and they'll be up fast. So at the time, it seemed early, but now it seems like it was maybe the best thing to do. when you look at the seeding progression for where we are right now, for the third week, I don't have a number in there. As I mentioned, the crop report will be coming out probably by lunch today, so it'll have that number in there. But if I had to put a number in there right now, I'm guessing for the province, we're probably going to be in that 50 to mid 50 range for completed. So still would put us ahead of the 5 year average and probably better than probably similar to last year, maybe just a little bit more than last year. So kind of right on par. Just like I mentioned, it's going to be go time from now till the end of the month here. When you look at the yield response to seeding dates. We're getting to that point. When you look at the line between the third and fourth week of May, there's pretty much every crop has hit the 100% or starting to fall lower. Besides, I guess flax is still, gives us a few more days to get the flax in. But when you look at some of the crops, we're definitely starting to drop off fairly fast here. So as I mentioned, it's kind of getting to that critical time to get the crop in. And the good part about the forecast is they are talking a bit of warmth or heat coming in. I think that's the biggest thing we've been waiting for now. I do know that some parts of the province are definitely still looking for some rain, and a lot of those areas are to the north, mainly Interlake and eastern regions. I think are still behind. A lot of the southern regions are close to the 100% or maybe even better than that. So we're definitely getting to that point where we're getting the heat is going to make a big difference to get this crop growing. Lori, is there a question?
Yes, there is. Prairie Sky Agronomy at Niverville said they're seeing a minimum amount of flea beetle damage in canola.
Yeah, well, it's probably if the canola is up, I guess that would be the. I'm not sure if John is on today, but the worrisome part there would be slow growth of the canola because of the cool conditions and the rain and the wind. So definitely would need to be keeping an eye on that because probably in the cotyledon stage to maybe the first leaf, and so you don't need a lot of flea beetles to to do a lot of damage in a short period of time. So definitely keep an eye on them. The other thing I'd be watching for too in that situation is because of the cool conditions and the strong winds we've been having. Keep an eye on the stems. We could see more feeding on the stems than maybe up on top of the leaves. But as the temperatures increase over the next while here, we could see more feeding on the leaves. But right now, I tend to see them a lot of times when it's windy and cool, more feeding lower to the ground. So they could be doing some feeding on the stems as well.
Okay, great. And that's all in the questions right now. And no, John is
Okay.
not currently on, just so you know.
Yeah. I just seen my screen doesn't show the question, so I
No
just thought I
worries. Yep, you bet.
good. Thanks. We have an updated frost map. Thanks to Allison for letting me know that this morning. So this map has been updated from the map we were using previously. And so you can see there's been a few changes to probably the biggest changes are the early frosts. And I don't know if Allison, you're on there right now. Do you want to make a comment right now of the changes to the map or any changes to the map, or is it just an updated?
It's an updated map to include before I think our map data stopped at 2012. So these new maps encompass a lot longer data for 1961 to 2023. So it captures some of those trends that we're seeing with longer growing seasons that we might be seeing as part of climate change. So the dates have changed a little bit in terms of the averages. We're seeing earlier last spring frost. So longer growing seasons. So we're seeing our fall frosts happening later and our spring frost happening a little bit earlier by a few days here and there.
Yeah, I noticed from what I seen is some of the red areas maybe got um, a little bit smaller. I don't know. I didn't have enough time to really compare the two, but you could definitely see there's a bit of difference between the two maps.
Right. Yep.
Okay, I see John is on. John, I don't know if you heard the question regarding flea beetles.
Sorry, I don't know. Could you repeat the question?
Sure, maybe just not you're on. You're probably got to or hear from a bigger area in the province, anyways. So, uh, Lori, could you read that question again?
You bet. So, Prairie Sky Agronomy in Niverville said they're seeing a minimum amount of flea beetle damage in canola.
A minimum amount. Not surprised at that. Both crucifer and striped flea beetle are out. It's uh, in fact, there are quite a few crucifer flea beetles are out. I think that hot weather we had early last week really brought them out. So both species are out. Up until now, there's been a lot of feeding on the volunteer canola, some of the flicksweed and other wild crucifers. As the canola starts to come up, it's certainly one thing that we'll have to watch. Right now, hopefully, the seed treatments are still effective. Um, the seed treatments uh, usually give you 3 to 4 weeks. When we get excessive moisture, sometimes it reduces the length that the seed treatments work. They don't work if it's bone dry soil. They need some moisture to get them into the plant. But if there's enough moisture for the plants to germinate, the seed treatment is working. Excessive rain, though, you have a leaching effect, plus the seed treatment is just taken up a lot quicker. So um, I would say roughly about 3 weeks after seeding is when you really need to start watching it carefully for more extensive feeding. But you can expect minimal feeding, some level of feeding, even when the seed treatments are working, just because they do have to take that bite or two to get killed.
Yeah, one of the comments I added, John, was that to watch for where they're feeding at this time with wind and cool conditions. You had mentioned before or at one time about watch for stem feeding as well.
Yes, and now we really don't know what makes them do more stem feeding. One of the hypotheses or lines of thinking is that when it's very windy, very cool, they'll spend less time up on the cotyledons and possibly more time feeding on the stems, especially if it's a cool, windy day and they're hunkering down, uh, maybe in a crack in the soil near the plant. It's probably a lot easier just to do a little bit of feeding on the stem than to get yourself up on that cotyledon. Days that are hot, fairly dry, and calm, they'll prefer to be up on the cotyledons and leaves. But yeah, when the weather's not so good, we may see more of that stem feeding.
Okay, thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, being that we're into questions, we might as well jump right into the crop scouting panel. And first question today is going to go to Dennis Lang. And I think Dennis might have a couple slides made up, but I was out in a couple fields where the peas are starting to come up. And I know one of the things that we always like to talk about is determining the growth stage of peas because it comes really important when it comes time for spraying as to knowing when the product you're using and what stage the peas need to be in. So I thought it'd be a good time to start talking about staging of peas. So Dennis, you take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Lionel. I'm going to just share my screen here and we'll just get started here. And go full screen. There we go. Okay. So probably one of the biggest things to look at is you can't look at the height of the plant when you're judging staging. During certain growing conditions, when it's warmer, peas can grow quite rapidly, and you can in some cases miss that staging for some of the various chemistries. Now, when you look at the screen here, what you'll see is on a pea plant, you'll have two scale nodes. They are either just below the surface or just above the surface. And this scale node here has a branch. And when you're judging mature or when you're judging staging, what I always like to do is count the number of elephant ears clinging to the main stem. So these big, big leaves, those are the ones that they call the true leaves. And that's what you should be counting when you're counting staging for peas. So, for example, in this particular instance here, you'll see here that you have your two scale nodes right at the bottom. And your first node where the elephant ear is attached is here. The second node is here. Third node is here, and so forth. If the leaf is not fully open, you don't count that. So most products you have to spray before that sixth node stage or the sixth true leaf stage. And that's what you really need to be counting is in that case. So if you count the number of elephant ears that are clinging to the main stem, then you'll be good. If you look at this particular plant here, you would not count this branch here for staging. The other thing just kind of keep in mind, for those of you who didn't or either chose not to roll after seeding and want to roll after the peas are up, typically you can roll up to that third true leaf stage or the three elephant ear stage. Wait until they're all up. Warm day, 25-degree plus day, and roll in the afternoon. I think those are some of the big factors. So you can roll peas after they're up. I've seen it done in my neck of the woods here on a really warm day, and honestly, it was even tough to see that the peas were even impacted by the roller going across. But it was a very warm day, so keep those things in mind. So that's what I had on for you on rolling and staging for you, Lionel.
Okay, and just one question for you, Dennis, regarding timing of spraying. Maybe make a comment on staging for spraying for soybeans, being that some beans have been in the ground for a while, and what producers need to watch for there.
You asking soybeans or peas?
Soybeans.
Soybeans, okay. So typically for soybeans, glyphosate alone is safe at all stages. And typically, for some of the glyphosate and the extend beans, you want to get it on early. So kind of in that, unifoliate, the first trifoliate stage, follow the label. But for glyphosate alone is safe in any stages, but we shouldn't just be using glyphosate anymore. We need to be using, the dicamba products in there. So you can go ahead and spray according to label. And right now, we're probably not going to see much emerging right now because a lot of the soybeans just kind of went in last week and we've had some cooler weather. And so I haven't seen any soybeans up yet, but they're going to be getting pretty close here once the weather warms up.
Okay, and a question came in regarding what would be the reasoning for rolling peas?
The main reason for rolling peas is for stones. If you're having to deal with stones, then you're going to be rolling your peas either after seeding or after emergence. That would be the main reason to keep stones out of the combine. So,
perfect. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next question that has come up is for Allison Sassen. Allison, it's regarding the weather. We've had quite the week of weather, and I thought it'd be maybe a good chance to update where all the rain went. There's reports of heavy rains. There's reports of no rain. And the temperatures. We've got some cool temperatures. So, Allison, if you want to grab the screen and give us your weather info.
Sure. Okay, just bear with me. Move this over. How does that look?
Looks good.
Okay. So yeah, I just put together a few summary slides, and I did a very quick analysis this morning on some of the extremes that we've seen. It's hard to believe that we're only in the third week of May right now with some of the wacky stuff that we've seen. So up till yesterday, sorry, Monday, so May 19th, our 8-day accumulated precipitation for the past week was completely different than the year before or the week before. We were very dry up until the previous week, and then last year we had last week, I'm sorry. It feels like a year. It's been so erratic, but it's only been 3 weeks. So we got a lot of rain in the southwest corner and central regions. We were seeing things varying just over the past week from rainfall and flood warnings in the southwest to wildfires in the east and the northwest. So a really mixed bag. The rains that we saw last week did bring our percent of normal precipitation much closer to normal in many regions. So we were quite dry up until last week. And now we're seeing in the southwest, some areas are almost too wet. So we're seeing almost 200% of normal. Some areas are even higher than that. So seeing double of what we'd usually expect in terms of precipitation for this time of year. And then parts of the Interlake, the east, and a couple of places in the northwest are still pretty dry. So less than 60% of average. Compared to the 30-year average in terms of rainfall accumulation. So there's some areas that still need some precipitation, some areas that could probably do without some for a little while. And it's also impacted by the temperatures that we're seeing. And now that we're seeing crops come up, we're going to see some evapotranspiration come along with those crops too. So in terms of how much precipitation we've seen and where we've seen it, I did a quick analysis. So we have the highest monthly precipitation has actually been in Morden with about 89 millimeters. I just picked the top 5 of each area. And I will provide the caveat that the monthly precipitation includes Environment and Climate Change Canada station, whereas the daily and the hourly is just the Manitoba Agriculture Weather Station. So that's why you're not seeing Morden and Carberry included in the second 2 columns. Our highest daily precipitation was on May 15th, so that was last week, and we saw the most precipitation in the central regions around Somerset, Holland, Shiloh, and then our hourly precipitation, so that highlighted some of the storms that we were getting, were again and mostly in the central region around Somerset, one in the east in Gardenton, and but mostly in the central regions. And that's again highlighting some of those intense rainfalls. So we did have a couple of days of more consistent rain, but we did have some thunderstorms roll in last week as well. In terms of soil moisture, as of Monday, May 19th, we're seeing wet to very wet conditions at the 0 to 30 centimeter depths for the central, southwest, northwest, and the western parts of the Interlake. We're seeing optimal to dry and a few pockets of wet conditions in the east and Interlake as well. Again, use those very dry spots kind of with a grain of salt. Sometimes it's just very well drained soils where our weather stations are, or sometimes the sensors get a little off kilter over the winter. So we're seeing optimal right now conditions in the east, but I think we could definitely still use some precipitation in that region to get us back up to those normal conditions. In terms of the 0 to 120 centimeter depths, we're seeing wet conditions throughout the province for the most part, with a couple of pockets of very wet conditions, especially in that central area where they had the most rainfall, and a few pockets of optimal conditions where we're seeing the soil dry out due to the lack of precipitation. Lionel did mention seems like we've had a very windy May so far. It's hard to compare. I did this analysis this morning, so I didn't have time to compare to previous years, but that's something that we'll do over the next few weeks. I just wanted to highlight some of those maximum wind speeds that we've seen. So the highest wind speed we saw since May 1st was in Minto at 96 kilometers an hour. Boissevain had a max wind speed of 93 kilometers on May 11th. And then we had a few stations that had over 85 kilometer an hour winds. And it was scattered. So we had high winds May 10th, May 11th, May 13th, May 8th, May 13th, May 16th, and May 8th again. So part of it came with some of those storms, but it just seems like it's been windy for a little while, for a couple of days, anyways, for the last week. I also did a quick check on how many stations had days where the wind gusts were over 50 kilometers an hour. And again, this is just for May, so we're on May 21st. We had 4 stations that saw 13 days with wind gusts over 50 kilometers an hour. And this again just goes until yesterday, so it doesn't include anything we've seen since yesterday. We've had 10 stations that have had 12 days over 50 kilometers an hour, 10 days with 10 stations with 11 days above 50 kilometers an hour, and 15 stations above with 10 days above 50 kilometers an hour. So we've had a lot of windy days with some of those high winds. In terms of heat, these are our percent of normal heat accumulation maps for growing degree day and quart heat units. So way above normal for both accumulations because of those really hot temperatures that we saw last week and earlier in May. In terms of temperature, the highest temperature we've seen so far in May was at Petersfield at 37.9 degrees on May 13th. However, we've also been seeing some low temperatures. So around May 7th, we saw some pretty low temperatures, our lowest being at Rorketon at -6. Our greatest temperature change in one day. Most of them were on May 4th. We had a couple on May 8th as well, where our highest was at Arborg, where we had a high of 30 degrees and a low of 0.2 degrees, which is a temperature variation of 30 degrees in one day. So really wide temperature ranges, even over short periods of time. And normal temperatures for around this time of year are usually high teens to low 20s for most of the province. And we've seen days over 30 degrees, multiple days. Again, we're only 3 weeks into the growing season. Minto has had 6 days over 30 degrees. Wawanesa has had 6. Beausejour and Bede have had 5, as well as Brandon. Brandon has had 5 days, not 95 days over 30 degrees. And predictions are looking like we're going to see above normal temperatures on average over the next month as well. So we're seeing between a 50 to 70% chance for most of Agro-Manitoba that temperatures will be above normal. Again, not every day is going to be above normal. We're going to have some variation, but just on average over the next months, we're expecting above normal temperatures. And after a quick look into the forecast as well, I'm not seeing any significant rainfall forecasted over the next 5 days in many parts. There might be some sprinklings today in the western regions and possibly the central regions, but anything farther than 5 days is pretty hard to predict. So we're going to be watching that and hoping to get some rain in those areas that really need it, and maybe some drying conditions in those areas that have had enough for a little while. And that's all I've got, Lionel. So I'll pass it back to you.
On the map where your chart where you showed the amount of days or the wind for where they had the highest winds or whatever. Are you able to from that figure out how long during the day it was intense winds? Like, was it for 12 hours, 10 hours, or was it all day? Or
Yeah, we were doing a little bit of analysis right before the call, and we weren't really able to come to a conclusion. So these are the maximum wind speeds. So at one point, or at 7:44 on May 10th, Minto reached 96 kilometers an hour. We can go through and see how long those sustained winds were. Again, the sustained winds were likely not at 96 kilometers an hour. We didn't see a lot of stations that had average wind speeds above 50 kilometers for the month. I think we only saw one or two-ish stations. But that's something that we're going to look at. Maybe we'll have an update for you next week. We just need to do a little bit more digging to get those numbers and, and determine. We'd like to see the averages and the wind gusts as well.
so can from our weather stations and from the work you do, can you say, like, let's say for example today it's 20-kilometer winds right now, and can you say by 5 o'clock the wind should be down to 3 kilometers, or kind of give those kind of projections, I guess?
Uh, I can't from our weather station, so it's again, my forte is not forecasting, but there often is like a range of forecasted wind speeds. I don't know how reliable they are. That's something that I don't know how much um, reliability there is, and usually it's quite a range. So it said, you know, winds between at 50 gusting to 80, and then you might see in the forecast winds diminishing to 20. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be 20 kilometers an hour for the rest of the day. It just means that the winds might be diminishing. But it's something that I'll look into a little further, and see what kind of accuracy there it has been studied in terms of the wind speeds. I know that's something that's really important to know when we're trying to plan um, our field activities. So yeah, it's something I'll look into, and we'll try to get some of those numbers in terms of the sustained winds as well.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just kind of curious because I was thinking about spraying, and producers always having um, the question regarding, is the wind going to go down at this time, or when should I start looking at when I might be able to uh, maybe look at spraying or get ready for spraying.
Yeah, and they're definitely included in some of the detailed forecasts that you can access, and some apps have that ability built in as well. So it's just a matter of how precise. Again, wind speed is something that's really relative to location, and it's just a matter of how precise to your location it might be. And also remember that when I say wind speed is relative as well, our wind speeds are measured at 10 meters above the ground. And when you're spraying, you're not spraying at 10 meters above the ground. So always something to take into consideration as well when making those assessments. I mean, it's not going to be that much of a difference, but it's definitely is something to consider.
Somebody just put up about use the Windy app. It has wind forecast, and I think you might have mentioned that before.
Yeah, the Windy app does have wind in the forecast, and there's also actually a way if you select a location on the map, there's a little tab that comes up on the bottom showing your forecast. And if you go down to the very, very, very bottom of that little window that pops up, you can actually compare forecasts, and it'll show you a whole bunch of different forecasts for that location. And you can use that to kind of help make your decisions as well. So I always say when you're looking at forecasts, the more information that you can gather from the most different sources to make your decision is a good way to go. So, and Environment Canada does use our weather data in their forecasting. Um, so that's something to consider as well.
Okay, good. Thanks, Allison. That was good information, and sure is different to see how windy it was, or the different wind speeds we've been getting. So,
Mhm.
okay. Another question that I've been getting the last few days here is wheat's coming up, and it's got a yellowish color to it, and just producers are wondering what was going on. I know you can drive by quite a few fields, and you can almost see the yellow tinge from the road. And I was talking to Ann Kirk, and she can't be here today, but we were talking yesterday about it, and kind of both came to the conclusion that it was basically weather related. The cool, damp conditions, the cool conditions when it's coming up through the ground, and the wind. The wind also have an effect on it, and kind of compare it to other years when we talk about heat banding when the soil gets really warm and the crop comes through. A lot of times we'll get a white line as to where the plant was at the soil surface when it was coming up, and as it grows, that line kind of comes up with the plant, and then you see these white bands on some of your plants. And so I think that's what we're seeing here. Probably this coming week will it'll be oh, the crop will outgrow it for sure. And but again, that's kind of what we attributed that to. So we'll see what happens over the next week if it outgrows it. If not, then maybe we'll have to investigate a little bit more. But that's what I would call it right now. Okay, just a few more things before we start wrapping up for the day. If you're in the Carmen area today, from 1 o'clock to 1 or 3:30, there is the Weed Seeding Identification Day at the Ian Morrison Research Station. So get down there and have a hands-on identification clinic on weeds. Kim has been very busy, and I think some of the other staff have been giving her a hand getting things organized and put together. And I think some of our staff will be there. So if you got questions, not just on weeds, I think there'll be some of the other staff there as well. So a good place to go, especially on a day when we might not be working in the fields yet, and we might have some time to take in a day of weed ID. Also, on the 22nd of May, there'll be another workshop, and it'll be in Brandon at the North Hill campus. And again, another day where they have an interesting kind of weed garden, I guess we call it. And they have weeds that are growing there basically on a yearly basis. So come there, take a look at weed identification. Kim is going to be there as well. I'm not sure for sure who else will be there. Myself, maybe Amir might be there as the crop extension specialist. But come down, take a look, and again get an opportunity to talk to Kim in person for sure. If you have any questions, the crop extension specialist, there is our contact information and where we're located out of. So give us a call. We're getting heavy into growing season, heavy into weed control season. So definitely give us a call if you have any questions. Our livestock specialists, as we get closer and closer to getting cattle to pasture, it'll be important to make sure their health is there, and also making sure your pastures can last the summer. So especially if it gets weather changes and it gets hot and dry on us, make sure you have some good plans for your pasturing for this year. our crop insurance offices throughout the region, or throughout the province, sorry, and there's their locations and their 1-800 numbers. If you want a field crop production guide, again, you can contact any of the crop production extension specialists, as well as they're all available at the MASC offices. Remember, the livestock price insurance program is going to be coming to a close in June the 12th. So if you're interested in livestock price insurance, get on top of that and make sure you don't miss that deadline. And that's what we have for today. Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of myself or Lori. Have any ideas for future workshops or future crop talks, give us a call and join us next week, May the 28th, for our next edition of Crop Talk.